Welcome back to the Carrot and Stick podcast, a podcast series where we go through all things performance management and motivation to understand what makes our wonderful world of recruitment tick. Today, I'm sitting down with Dualta Doherty, the managing director of the Doherty Group, and I'm pretty sure I've just butchered his name in some way, shape or form during that, but we move. We have a really good chat today because Dualta's been around the recruitment industry for the last 13 years and has worked with over 100 recruitment startups, helping them get all the things right and in place for them to grow and build a successful business. We go through some of the lessons that he's taken away from those 100 startups, what people do right, what they get wrong, the most critical things, most importantly, to get right, what the whole world around working from home looks like today and how companies are still struggling with that, and the value of face-to-face meetings in a world that is increasingly online in this post-COVID era that we now live in. It's a really good conversation. He's a very engaging speaker. Like he tells me at the end, you'd never guess he's done this 200 or 300 times before, and I'm sure you'll get some really valuable insight from this one. So without further ado, let's get into it with Dualta, Managing Director of the Doherty Group. So, Dualta, thank you very much for jumping on. Really appreciate you giving us your time. I've really got to ask first and foremost, behind you, I couldn't help but notice the whole jiu-jitsu background. Is that yours? Are you in a gym? Like, what's the story there?
My wife and I, Charlotte, we ended up changing our offices. We're here in Gibraltar, right? So we ended up changing our offices and building a jiu-jitsu gym. So we've got our office. We can't see it to the right of me here. So Charlotte's in there doing her advisory work and a bit of rec to rec. And then at 5 p.m., this will turn into kids classes, kickboxing, and all the rest. So just circumstance happened. There's actually no money in it. But we've made lots of friends and the kids are happy and we get to train ourselves. And it kind of feeds into the 11-year-old boy I used to be and dreaming that maybe one day I could have something like that.
I think it's just a really expensive excuse for her to be able to kick the crap out of you once a day by the sounds of it, mate.
I definitely deserve it. She needs to be playing so.
I love it. Awesome. Cool. So give us a quick 2-3 minute intro to you first. I think you mentioned to me earlier on 13 years in recruitment. Give us a quick overview of that journey. What's it all about? Where have you been? What have you done? Let's hear it.
Sure. Got into it late enough for our industry, about 27. Was picking beans on a farm in Australia and heard about this recruitment thing and a mining boom that you could get sponsored and stay in Australia. So went from picking beans to making like 100K straight away in recruitment. And Charlotte was actually there as well. And she ended up going into internal recruitment. I went into agency. We had a double income. We were young. It was unbelievable. And we rode that wave. I was in IT recruitment and then she was doing mining. We rode that wave for a few years, then went to Canada, did the same again, thought it would work out just the same, didn't work out. Market crashed, got to experience what it's like not working for one of the best companies in the world and working for like a mom and pop show that had no infrastructure and a load of search consultants and people kind of running their own business within a business. And also knowing that my limitations, I wasn't the superhero that I thought. We're a bit fed up with life in Canada after Perth because it was cold, it was wet and it was freezing all year round and I wasn't making any money. My ego was hurt. So we packed our bags, took the last of our savings, moved to Guatemala and set up a rec-to-rec business. That's been running for over 9 years now. From that business, I set up a podcast, the Recruiter Startup Podcast that did really well. And from that, I set up the RecWired community. Initially, that was with Andy Hallett, and then Charlotte came in and ran it. And from that, we ended up coaching about 100 startups. And then Charlotte's moved her advisory practice on to bigger businesses as well. In the last year, we've built and developed RecWired Plus, which is an all-in-one recruiter training platform, which also helps the recruitment founders as well. So we've kind of swapped roles a little bit. Charlotte's done all the build on that. She's jumped back into the rec-to-rec business and is getting on with that. Now I've jumped into running the sales team. So I suppose what I do now is if you're a recruitment founder, I can give you people. I can introduce you to people like you do. I can help you with your advisory. If not, like somebody like me, I have the connections to the guy that can sell your business, or maybe the guy that can set up contract, or the guy, or Charlotte who can sort out all your tech stack, whoever it is at whatever stage of the journey you have. And now the final piece was, how can we help train your staff and not just you? And that's where we partnered with Dan Alexander, the recruitment coach, and we built RecWired Plus. it's built on our software. So we also have a shareholder called Dominic McGlynn, who is a genius, and he came in and architected the whole thing. And what we're able to do is move with the needs of the customer as and when we want. So if you're a founder, I've got an overcoat here with everything in it for you.
I was about to say that I hate the phrase one-stop shop because it kind of devalues in a way, I think, but it sounds like you guys are looking to cover a lot of the things that a recruitment leader or company owner, whoever it may be, really needs, right?
Yeah, and if I can't do it personally, I can.
You know someone. You know a guy, right?
I have a guy who is best in class, and we vetted them. So and we've done this for years. So I'm in a nice place where if I do a meeting with a client and I'm passionate about doing meetings, I can help them with their business. Whereas when I was just doing Rec to Rec, it was hard because they wanted one thing that was specific, and I know that might be able to get that once a year for them. And we have this disconnect. So it's nice to be able to really service and be part of it.
I mean, that piece around the whole face-to-face meetings is one of the topics we'll go through in a minute. It's 3 we agreed was, or 3 we spoke about before. 1, like you said, you've coached about 100 recruitment startups, which in itself is going to have so much insight in it. The second one is how do we get people in this kind of more... It's always going to be a post-COVID world, it feels like at this point. It feels like kind of like BC and AD, the whole thing with Christ and that. It's like that, but with COVID in the early 2000s. It's ridiculous. Yeah. But we'll talk about that as well and getting people out more face-to-face. And then we'll also go through kind of the hybrid working environment as well, because those sound like good areas to me. Ready to go through them?
Let's go.
Love it. Right. 100 startups you've coached. Again, really valuable insight because most people we bring on here, it's not at all to diminish their the things that they share with us, but obviously they work in one company, maybe been in the second before. You've worked with potentially hundreds and seen the inner working, skeletons in the closet and everything. So let's start at the very beginning. What do people tend to get right in the early days when getting themselves set up?
When they make the decision to have a crack at it, like a lot of times they don't have a lot to lose by having a go at it. They've maybe got fed up with their employer, or maybe they have a few quid to like just about get going, or their timing's right. So at least they're giving it a go. That's probably what they get right.
Nothing else? That's all they get right.
A lot wrong, though.
That's my follow-up question, to be fair. Yeah. So if that is what they get right, this is very short, and I'm imagining you're about to say everything else you can think of. What do they get wrong in the early days then? Let's go there.
Well, I suppose before we go into it, we have to define who they are, right? So if you've been professionally trained at a recruitment agency, you're going to at least be able to build or know processes that will get you to that point. If you've worked for a mom and pop shop and you think you're doing it all, but really you're just doing delivery work for them and you're out, you're going to be in a world of pain, right? If you are professionally trained and you've worked your way into billing management and you have that experience of teams and structure, maybe you have connections to a bit more money and all the rest, then you're probably going to get more right. So there's people who don't have experience in recruitment at all who've come in. So it depends which bucket you fall into, and the strategic plan that you'll build somebody around their needs and goals and all of that depend on where they're at from finance, from knowledge, experience, and ultimately what they want out of it. Like a large portion of recruiters say, I just want a nice life and I want to build 200K. I'm like, that's all right when somebody else is running everything for you. But if it's just you and you've got 200K, you're going to find that you're doing 2 jobs to get to that 200. So
totally,
it's really hard, and you'll be burnt out, and you'll be reliant on 2 customers because you won't have time to do all the other stuff, and it's a challenge, right? So then they'll get to a stage where they'll be like, maybe I want to hire, but they didn't have a plan to do that. And then they hire their cousin, and they've wasted money on that, and they just don't have a plan. So having a why, setting a proper plan in place, and then it's just the actions, accountability of making that happen, and like adjusting that as you go. The market's crap right now, but it's bouncing, so it's going to be interesting the next while. But it would have been a tough 6 months previous for anybody who just launched. So you need to have plans change. You need to have good voices around you. You need to have good processes. You need to have good work ethic. And you need to make sure that you've just everything, all your ducks in a row.
And essentially the main thing is to know that if you are going through that kind of journey, it is your first time and you don't want to run through 10,000 hurdles to get to a point where things feel like they're going right. That's when you tend to work with therapists. I swear to God, you haven't sponsored this podcast, but it's where they come and work with someone like you to at least reduce the height of those hurdles somewhat. They're still going to be there, but have someone to help guide you through those murky waters is the idea, right?
Well, yeah. And also speak to like an advisor, speak to somebody you respect, like find somebody in the industry. It doesn't have to be like a course or a mentor or anything. Find somebody that's got to a place, message them and say, hey, I'm on this journey. Can I ask you 10 minutes? Can I buy you a coffee? I really respect what you've done. People will respond well. Like we've a massive community of recruitment founders, scalable and independents in separate buckets. And guys will give you their knowledge. They don't, as long as you know you're not taking up too much of somebody's time, people will sit down and have a coffee and share their knowledge. You know, it's not a closed off industry. There's no mad secret sauce. Largely it is planning, executing the plan, and sticking to it and making good decisions along the way. And in your world, it's not buying all the tech on day one. Like
you don't need it all on day one.
You don't need it all on day one, right? You like buy what you need, you know, have your accountant, have your LinkedIn license, and then go from there. Like you obviously need a Zoom, you need different things. And then once you kind of get a deal in and you see where you're at, and then you can start going, okay, now I'll get maybe I need a couple of staff, right? Okay, OneUp will probably help me manage that, or another tool will help me do this. You know, like you know, we get a lot of value out of like Sourcewell and Loxo, and depends which ATS you have. But the tools come after the first few deals, and then because what happens is you're signing long contracts. If you sign long contracts and you can't project any billings, and it's just because you've done one deal and you got excited, then you know it's difficult. So yeah,
where are you going to land?
Really good advice.
Yeah, no, completely that. And honestly, when you heard about tech on day one, I was like, oh, that's a great question to talk to or ask Charlotte when I do a podcast with her as well, with your wife. Yeah. I'm sure she'll have loads to say about that.
and again, it depends on who it is on day one. So let's say it's somebody who works for one of the world-class recruitment agencies and they've built a contract division and they have a few quid and they know what they're doing, and that person should buy their tech on day one. But again, it goes down to the bucket. The guy who has no experience definitely shouldn't do it. And the person who is the next rung up, who has okay experience, like be careful. And then your degree of risk is actually greater the less experience you have.
Completely agree, because it's the unknown unknowns in that sense, right? And that's what I spoke about earlier with the hurdles that you encounter. Those who have walked the journey know where those hurdles are. They know how high they're going to be, how high they need to jump to get over them. Someone who hasn't, approaching it and got about half a second to react, and it's like, oh my God, like I've hired the wrong person. It's absolutely tripping me up. I bought this tech that I don't need, that I now can't afford. I can't service this client for this reason. I'm undercharging over there. Just a million and one things go wrong that really slow you down. I mean, we're 8 years into our journey, and I'd never run a software business before, and it was exactly the same. The errors that I made along that journey, good God. Like there was enough that I managed to do a talk back in October called How Not to Build a Startup because of all the things that we got wrong. And there are, like you say, so many things that can go wrong. And so to ask you a question more, I guess, linked somewhat to RecWired, but also to a coach, a mentor, for example, one thing that I see really experienced, you know, both in recruitment and outside it, really experienced individuals will say, you know, I've got mentors, sometimes multiple of them for different areas.
Yeah.
Do you feel it's more about refinement with those mentors? Because some will turn around and say, well, if you're just getting started, there's tons of things you can do that don't need you to have a mentor in place. Or do you think it's important on day one, really, as soon as you're looking to get started, that you do have multiple mentors lined up to help you on that journey? Where do you think mentors are most important is what I'm asking, I guess.
And I know I keep coming back to who you exactly are and what your knowledge base is, but that's key. So if you've been in the industry for 10 years, for example, and you've ran teams and, you know, your peer group is going to be pretty good and their peer group is going to be pretty good. And if they're a systemized, scalable company, you're probably going to have access to people who've left that business over the years, and they're going to be like, I did this on the journey. So you could probably get informal mentors pretty quick. And those people know you're capable. So they'll be like, I'm not wasting my time with this person. They've got a reputation. I'll just give them a few nuggets here and there. And that person can kind of motor on. So, but see, if you have no experience, like the person with no experience looking to join our industry, that was in the 100 startups. That was one of the mistakes I made. Was I got one guy with no experience, successful, up building his great business now, James Minard in Australia, and I had quite a few not make it, and they were a pain in my hole. It was because they expected me to give them everything, and then through that process, I realized I can't teach you all the basics and teach you how to run a business. So when we built RecWired Plus, I now have Dan Alexander for that. So if they join RecWired Plus, they can go into our rookie sessions, do 12 weeks. They can go into our advanced sessions. So that knowledge gap that I took for granted I had because I worked for Robert Walters and did well over the time there, most people don't have that. And most recruiters are not from a world-class organization. And as a result, they just haven't walked through that fire to be able to launch a business and just know, oh no, that's not how you run a meeting. That's not how you take a job brief. That's not how you run a morning meeting. All of that stuff. And that's not how you run your day, your week. That's not how you run a client meeting. That's like all of the stuff that you're drilled in a good company, they don't have. So we've tried to build that for them.
I love that as well. It's almost like it's a mix almost of recruitment specific skills that you would get by being trained how to be a good recruiter, but also professional skills, right? Not just purely recruitment. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, I always try and break things into like the persona of who it is. So in the RecWired community, the independents spray into a lot of different categories, and their hopes and goals and all the rest. One minute they want to be an exec search business, the next minute they want to have an event and a scalable business. Whereas the guys who are further on, usually they have an identity. So they're like, I want to have a boutique. I want to have 5 to 10 good billers. I want to do international. I want to do this. I want my margins to be high. Or the other guy might be, I want a contract business. I want to run it like an S3 business. I want the formula that they had and I want to put it into my business. So when we're building RecWired Plus, we have the boutique track. We have the exec search where we're building the exec search. We have the contract track. Then we have the generalist stuff for 12 weeks to get from A to Z in your foundations. And then we have the more advanced stuff as well. So it's trying to service the different people and their different goals. But you can only do so much, People have to go and make the work themselves.
Okay, so to round up on this kind of 100 startup sort of area, some of the people that have listened to this, no doubt, are those that have got 3, 4, 5, maybe it's about 10 heads or so, and are looking at how they get towards that next stage. Now, they're starting to figure things out, and they get into a stage where making things scalable is going to become the real challenge for them. Mm-hmm. What are the 3 mistakes that you see companies often make at this early phase of a business that you would really kind of sit there and say, these are the 3 things you must be aware of, if nothing else?
Founders holding too many of the clients. And there might be arguing with a few people here, but there's a school of thought that's saying, like, oh no, we should have like 180 recruiters, and the founders or the leadership team should be the people who go out and win the business and hold the accounts. And that's an American model, and it works in a hot marketplace when it's easy to do that, and it works if you've got big accounts. But if you're a boutique at 5 to 10, it's hard to win those big accounts in a big city, right? Because you have to get on all the PSLs and all the rest. And again, that depends on your reputation, who you are, your connection, your time in the market, and all of that. So if the founder holds all of this and you have all these 180s here, when the market gets tight and the founders don't have enough to feed everybody, these people don't know how to feed themselves. And it's not necessarily how to make a cold call. It's about, are they commercial the whole way from the first time they pick up the phone with that person, understand their needs and wants, understand all the options they could give to this person. And then after the call, before the call, what happens? During the call, what happens? After the call, what are the action points? What are the follow-up points? Who around them can give advice? And in the next day in the meeting, are they accountable? So largely, they don't have these structures in place. So that structural issue is massive. The other thing then that founders probably do wrong is they haven't identified their perfect hire. So when I was at Walters, you walk into the room, you could tell everybody kind of was quite similar in certain ways. When I meet people from S3, they're quite similar to all the people that Walters and Page would hire. Maybe a little less aspirational in how they viewed themselves, but they had a certain type, and they knew what their room was, and they could do that at scale. So if you, and this might be wrong, right? But their age profile will all be the same. They'll be hitting between 20 and 35 or 20 and 30, 23 and 30. It'll be tight. So what you'll have is people at the same stage of life, people going through all the same things, and you're able to use the same training and the same thing. It's just about that McDonald's work processes.
It's like a factory, isn't it? It's making it scalable as well. That's the key thing there, and that means you need a certain.
People say, "Oh, that's wrong. That's bad. I'm a 45-year-old, whatever." Like, I don't care. Like there's a place.
I mean, look, there's people I've spoken to on here who say, "Look, we only hire senior consultants that are 40 plus and are more mature at this point." And those that are younger would turn around and go, "Well, that feels really horrible." It's like, sure, but that's the strategy they've taken to hiring, right?
And those people, they'll require more flexibility, a bigger cut on the billings. They'll require less work. They're probably less likely to steal your business because they're at a stage where they're like, everything's okay. But here's one thing: you won't be able to turn up the heat on them. So when you have a machine in place, you can dial that up whenever you need to, and then you can just hire more, and then that's how you create a winning sales culture. And you see it, and it like. The work from home, I suppose we're going to jump into some of that, has really, really damaged how companies are able to do that and to affect that output way of doing things. And I know a lot of people will be listening going, KPIs, that's not good. Like, how do you measure where your business is at? Like, I mean,
I think the problem is it's always like the reason that this podcast is named what it is. People hear the word KPIs and just assume it means beating people over the head. Oh, you're on 59 out of 60 calls today. Well, you've missed your KPIs and therefore you're in trouble. Not quite what it's about, though, is it? You can have those very micro level ones if you want, or you can have the more macro ones that help you guide. We call them leading and lagging measures often, right? I don't hear that phrase very often inside of recruitment, to be fair. But those are things that you control today, which is the leading versus the things that you have to wait to see the impact of potentially a couple of months down the line, right? And that's more what it's about when it comes to measures that I think are far more important. But you mentioned the whole work from home thing. Let's go straight into that now then and talk about that. What have you seen? Because I think I mentioned to you before the show, I think out of our 300 customers right now, 80% of them are hybrid, at least one day working at home a week. It tends to be 2, sometimes even 3, but they vary it based on what the needs of the individual are, or at least the good ones do. But what's your take on managing a remote team?
Well, there's remote and then there's hybrid. Yeah. So hybrid, you can cut in your accountability meetings for when they're in the office. And you can really grab lots of that, which is great. Work from home, you need to have daily structure. So ideally you have daily meetings with them. And I've ran a remote team the whole time. So, and it's been kept small. We've had people we've had 3 or 4 that's been with us forever. And then we've had a group of others that have come and gone and not really acclimatized to it, because although we give everybody loads of freedom and all the rest, we're still quite data driven. Don't ask me about any of that because Charlotte runs it, but it's that structure. So at this time we have a meeting. In that meeting, this is what's going to happen. Right now we go do our jobs. The next day we'll do a meeting. We'll talk about what we were supposed to do and what the plan is for the rest of the day, the rest of the week. And if times are going really well and everybody's busy, you don't need 5 meetings. Maybe you need 2. If times are tight like they are right now, you need bloody 5. So, and again, it comes down to that. How do you dial up things, and how do you make things work better when you need to? And obviously you need to communicate that to everybody who joins. This is the type of business we are. If you're a scalable company and you're talking about fully remote, I don't know, man. It's hard. And like one of the things when you start agency recruitment, I remember the recruitment dreams, and that I would be going to sleep and I'd be talking to IT contractors in my sleep, and then I'd be like having my managers talking to me in my sleep, and
Charlotte would just be like, "Can you shut up for 5 seconds?"
I know. It's all going to be worth it someday, baby. We'll have a jiu-jitsu gym in Gibraltar. It was like the intensity that you get from that experience. Like, this is what success looks like here. This person here, they're the $500,000 biller. This is how they run their day. And they run their day like this every day. And these are the results that they get from the actions that they do. So if you do that, you'll get this. But if you're fully remote, you don't really see that person in action. Like, you just have this person coming on to Zoom and you're like, oh, I'm not sure. So it's understanding what that is, what that intensity, how the sausage is made, not just here's a sausage, you know.
it's someone put it really nicely the other day. Actually, he's a software founder that I know. I think he did a LinkedIn post, and he basically said learning by osmosis is the biggest thing that you miss out on by being remote. It's not being in a formal training session. It's just sitting in the office and hearing them on a call a few desks away and being like, oh, the way they said that was really good, actually, and picking that up. And that is hard to recreate. Osmosis. Yeah, it's something that you don't pick up particularly easily in a remote environment unless you find a way to really create that. Like, we use a tool internally called Nooks, where all of our SDRs, I think 6 of them sit together and they'll call throughout the day. And you can kind of set the volume of those that are in the call with you that's not yourself. So they're all set at about 20%. You can hear them on their calls as well. So you might put the phone down, just sit and listen for 30 seconds and go, oh, that's pretty good, actually. And it does really help, but nothing really does quite beat being in that office environment where you can then walk over and be like, yo, can we just talk for 2 minutes over a coffee or something around what you said there and go through it together?
Give them a slap, you know.
Yeah, or that as well.
We're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to do that anymore. Sorry.
That's a few years ago, I imagine. Yeah. Awesome. Now we could go through that probably, but I'm quite conscious of time as well on this one. So let's get on to that third and final topic, which was getting people out to do face-to-face meetings. Really, this ties in quite nicely to that point around work from home teams, around remote working. But the thing you said to me was, since COVID, people have always defaulted to let's get on a call together and talk, whereas actually sitting down face to face is the go-to because it builds a much stronger relationship, right? So
I started my career in Australia, and you need to meet people face to face. You need to look in you in the eye, you need to shake your hand, and they need to know that you're going to be around for a while, and I want to be able to deal with you, or I don't. And it's amazing. It takes about a year to 18 months. If you do enough meetings, you'll be successful, right? And you can measure it by the meetings. So if you're remote, it's very hard to do that, right? And it's easy to become transactional. Now, hosting a podcast is hosting your podcast, hosting events, and flying into a specific city to do back-to-back coffee meetings once a quarter. If you can have those touch points, you can run a remote business. It takes a lot of discipline, a lot of marketing, a bit of travel, all of those things. Otherwise, you're going to be transactional. So
absolutely.
Yeah, there's ways to make it happen, but it's so necessary. And when I flew to Australia, they were like, I sat down with a few clients, and they're like, "Hey, you're really quiet on LinkedIn. You're not like giving anybody a hard time. You're not like we used to love that." And I was like, I think I just got a bit cozy, a bit soft. Right? Okay, I have to get back to taking part a bit more. And then we just reminisced on all the people we placed through the years, and this crack and this person in the industry, and I was like, I have a lot in common with these guys. In fact, I am these people. We've all been on this same kind of journey for years, and having that experience, I was like, fuck, I need to get back in the saddle here. What have I been doing? Why am I not out in front of people? And I came back and I was like, it is a new dawn today. Our business is going back to being way more relationship driven. And I got to sit with my mate, being a successful business over there. And he was talking about meetings are the main thing that he drives. And he has 2 businesses. One of them, they're not driving enough meetings. And he says, I can see it. I can see it in the data, at the end of every month. And he said it's some of it's a generational thing, some of it's a work from home thing, but the people who buy in to doing the meetings are still the people who's making the money.
Absolutely. It's really interesting because it's a thing that I've thought about for a long time. It's a thing about over the years, I've probably had 2 recruiters say, do you want to go grab a coffee? Like, not bless her heart and soul. Someone rang me the other day and I was like, I'm not really free to speak right now. And she started emailing me afterwards. And it was always I really want to build a relationship for when you are hiring. And I was like, great, that's a relationship for you, not for me. And it wasn't even like let's go and get a coffee, for example. It just was I want to build a relationship for when you're hiring. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, at least take me to dinner first. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be that 2-way thing. And it's a classic thing people always say. People buy from people.
My balls first. Tickle my balls a little bit.
Yeah, exactly that. Literally that. And I was just like, people buy from people they like. People buy from people they trust. And if you don't build that relationship, they don't trust you. And it does become highly transactional.
Dearie, I run a podcast. I have an audience of this here. I think it would be really beneficial to you. Can you come on? We can talk about this, this, and this. And then once you're on the podcast, you could have then went, hey, by the way, I also recruit for SDRs. Got a few people. Look, no pressure. What do you reckon? And you would have went, well, you've just done something for me. Thanks very much. I really respect that. Do you know what? Next time I've got a gig, I'm going to come to you. And that's how this business works. Like there's give and take, and
a really, really funny story in my own life. But now I've just really thought about it. It's really made me laugh. He's also Irish. Whenever we need to buy new furniture for our house, we always go down to Furniture Village in town because there's a guy called Paddy who works there. It's so stereotypical, it kills me. But he always turns around and he's like, Paddy will sort you out. Every time I walk in, he says that when I tell him what I want. And so I always go and only buy furniture from him because I trust him, right? Again, that relationship is so crucial.
Yeah. That's it. So, that's it. Go out, meet them. Do what you say you're going to do. Be accountable to it. If you didn't do it, call them and explain.
And also be willing to accept
the cycle over again.
The KPIs might not be as high. You might not make as many phone calls in a week as you want a consultant to do, for example, but the things they are doing are going to benefit you much better in the long term rather than just, I've done 20 more calls this week than what I would have done otherwise, right?
Yeah. That's it, buddy.
Love it. Cool. Right, quick fire round and then we can wrap things up. Who is your favorite LinkedIn influencer to follow or see the content of?
Wow.
Because you're quite in the LinkedIn sphere. You've got quite a lot of followers on there. You've been quite active historically. So what are you thinking?
I don't know. Maybe Backdoor Barry. Enjoy
I love seeing Barry Cullen going on people when he's just out there saying, Barry's coming for you. I'm just like, oh boy. I'd hate to get an email from Barry one day. Jesus.
Yeah, well, I've been on both sides of the coin.
And you still like him? How good's that?
Yeah. Okay, so let's go with him. What's the next one?
Favorite book or podcast?
Okay. I like the All In podcast. And that is, well, it's 3 guys who are essentially billionaires talking about venture funds, and they got a whole top-down look of the world, from where the government is to how that it's affecting funds to how the startups are run. They're all on the board of startups. What that means for hiring, what that means for society, so it's just 3 people I would never have access to, and it's really interesting to get an insight into their world, which is a million miles from my world.
All In podcast. I'll take that one down and give it a listen. Sounds pretty good. And then final question. Normally I'd ask this as 3 parts, but I'll ask it you as one because we spoke a lot about recruitment leaders already. A recruitment manager comes to you and says, what tip would you give for me to be able to progress towards being a leader one day? Say this is a person who's a year, 18 months into being a recruitment manager of a small billing team. What bit of advice would you give to them for them to work towards becoming a leader?
Keep your head down. Keep working. Keep making it happen. I like to see people build and then be able to build so much that they can pass stuff over, like clients over, candidates over, and just being. I suppose again, it's all about surviving at 18 months, and then ideally you want to be going. What is any type of management? I wasn't a good manager, by the way, and I wasn't pipped for it. I have more the Dana White style of Let's go in and break heads.
You're really putting yourself in a box here, aren't you, Christ?
Yeah. I am what listen, lad, I am what I am, right? It is what it is. And I'm 40 years old and I'm comfortable with it. But my mate was a good manager, right? Do you know what he did? He played the game right. So what is the business process? How does the business like to operate? Can you learn that? Can you do that? And can you work within that in not a non-cowboy way? And can you educate and treat the other people beneath you to do that? And can you do that while contributing yourself? So don't be a cowboy. Don't make it all about you. Figure out what the formulas are in the business. Don't try and create new formulas for the business, by the way. Just get the job done.
Love it. Just get the job done. You can wrap that up as I love it. Awesome. And that's about it, mate. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Really good conversation. Say again, sorry.
I'm going to go have a meeting with a client. That's what
you
go
and do just that.
Right? That's what you should do as well.
I'm going for another podcast after this, mate. Don't you worry.
Good lad. Good lad. Well, I'll have to get you on a live show, hey?
Let's do it, mate. Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Awesome, buddy. Catch you later.